Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you all could be with us. For those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad to have you join us. We're going to bring in our friends over on Instagram so they can be a part of our show today, too. And last but certainly not least, we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon. We have a brand new guest that's joining us for the first time here on Amazon Live. I love her new book. We're going to get a chance to talk about it. And we're now live on Amazon Live for Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see it here in this corner or down below. You also will see the new book by author Joanne Leedom Ackerman. It's called The Far Side of the Desert. We're going to talk to Joanne not only about the new book, but also what it's been like for her to share these characters and her love of the world with all of us. We also want to let you guys know to stay connected with Joanne. Joanne, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
So glad to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is definitely all mine. Joanne and I were just having a great conversation before this conversation. So, L. Puckett, hello to you. Good to see you over there on the IG side. Joanne, first of all, congratulations on The Far Side of the Desert. What has it been like for you already to see the way that readers are responding to it?
Well, it's been nice. This is the hardcover that's coming out tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
The paperback coming out tomorrow, and the hardcover came out last year. And
Mm-hmm.
as I was telling someone recently, what's fun for a writer who spends, we spend so much time alone writing the books, is to finally have a book come out and meet the readers and talk to the readers and hear what the story means to them and see it through other eyes. And that's been a lot of fun. And the book is done. The book is done well, so it's out in paperback. And I sure hope I can hear from more readers soon.
Yeah. And I think I'm so glad you brought that point, because I've always found, especially when I talk to authors who have had a book come out in hardcover, had that time with press, but then normally it's a year later when the paperback will come out, and they're able to not only to have something else for their existing customers, but also they're able to bring up those new readers. Talk to us about the writing journey for you, Joanne, because I had an idea from The Far Side of the Desert that we're able to see not only your love of adventure, but also travel in this book. What has it been like for you to share your own interests with the rest of us?
Yeah. Well, I've been writing my whole life. I began my career as a journalist. I was a reporter for the Christian Science Monitor, and earlier than that, I was writing for newspapers. And so I was used to writing, on almost a daily or at least every other day deadline, 800 words, 1,000 words, looking at the world from the outside, reporting. And that was fun. But I always was interested in the journeys inside and in the characters that were shaping the world and what they were thinking and learning about. And partly because in reading myself, I learned so much from a good novel. And so I finally sort of set my daily journalism aside. I still did journalism and began plunging into writing novels. But it takes a while. I mean, a novel, I write much faster now, so they don't take quite as long. But this novel took numbers of years, and it didn't get published right away. So I wrote another novel, and then went out again. Then I wrote another novel. And so, now I'm at the stage where they're being published, these Burning Distance, the novel the year before, and this one as international political thrillers, which they are. But I never sat down to write an international political thriller. I just sat down to write a good novel. And so it's fun for me to think, oh, I'm writing international political thrillers. This is fun. So the journey for me began probably in the intellectual journey began sort of in the 90s, as I was beginning to think about some of these issues. And I was writing another book at the time, and it just gestated. And then I began doing research, because the journalist in me has never gone away. So I really want to make sure I've got my facts right. I've got everything right. I've been the places, but the imagination takes you off somewhere else. And so I was, I've always had this discussion between the imaginative novelist and the journalist who says, but is that right? Is that right? So I had this long list of facts to check. And it's been fun. This novel, as you know, begins in Spain, Santiago de Compostela, and it goes to Morocco, to Cairo, to Gibraltar, to Washington, to London. There are lots of stops along the way, all of which I've been to many times, more than once.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you and I were talking about before we went on here, Joanne, that of course travel is something that you're aware of. How did you decide on the kind of the central part of the story? Because you said you don't necessarily set out to write a certain quote unquote genre or box of a book, but what is it that was kind of the initial seed for The Far Side of the Desert that kind of kicked it off for you?
Yep. Well, I've been for decades involved with an organization called PEN, International PEN, which has centers in over 100 countries. And in the 90s, 93, I think it was, I was elected to head up the human rights work for the international organization at a big Congress in Santiago de Compostela. At that Congress, we had a surprise visitor under high security. We actually, for the first time and only time, had to walk through metal detectors. And that visitor was Salman Rushdie, who was under high security because of the fatwa. And I and a few others had a small dinner with Salman. And at that dinner, I began thinking, what is it like if you have to vacate your life? If something just
Yeah.
lifts you out of your life, and all that you took for granted, there were points in your life were taken away from you. And that was, I think, the early idea that began happening. So the book opens in Santiago de Compostela, where two sisters who were very high powered professionals that don't see each other very much come together along with their brother. One of them is Samantha, is a broadcast journalist, very highly respected. Monty works for the State Department in Cairo, and their brother Cal is a journalist for The Economist, international diplomatic journalist. They come together in San Compostela, and one of them is kidnapped and just disappears. Nobody gets back to the family. Nobody says where she just disappears. And it's a diplomatic family. The parents have been, the father's been an ambassador, and they go to find the sister everywhere, and they can't find the levers to find her. And so it takes you into the outside story of the novel. Really is about trafficking, arms trading, people trafficking, financial manipulation, that sort of criminal membrane that is very much part of all the terrorist networks. And then the middle center of the story is about the family and the dynamics there. And then the
Yeah.
very center of the story is about the relationship between the two sisters.
Yeah. And it's so funny you said that, Joanne, because for me, the family part was such a big part because
Yeah.
I think it is one of those things that not only brings a connection, I feel like, with me as the reader, but also the what if for myself. What would I do if I'm in a situation like
Yeah.
this? What skill sets, could I rely on? But also where I may find a weakness. I want to say hello to Ava Fuentes. Good to be to see you over there on IG. God Daddy T, good to be to see you as well. I mentioned to you before we went live, Joanne, there was one of these, and this is a great time, I think, to bring this up. Monty, there's an interesting scene in the book with Monty and Philip. And Philip says to ask Monty the question, "What are you afraid of?" And Monty's answer was failure. And I'm curious for you, out of the two sisters, Samantha and Monty, which one was the biggest connection you felt with?
Well, probably, I had to, as a novelist, you have to be able to connect with all your characters, understand them, but probably Samantha, because as a journalist, I've been a journalist,
Yeah.
I've been on the front lines. And that's probably where, but I understood Monty. I have a sister, so
Hmm.
I understood Monty. And I'm not Samantha. My sister isn't Monty, but I understood some of that dynamic. I'm the older sister, so
Okay.
I understand the dynamic.
Yeah. What was it like for you at that moment as Monty's kind of reflecting to kind of think about how she had doubts about herself and her own abilities?
Yeah, well, Monty in the book is actually in some ways the smartest of them all, as the father has recognized in her. But
Mhm.
we all carry. I think I have never met anyone who doesn't have self doubt somewhere. They don't always confess them
Yeah.
to you, but you can see them in their actions because we're finding who we are, how we relate to the world, what's wanted for us. Some people's self doubts, they mask them by being, thinking they know everything and never wrong. But that's really just a mask of deep self doubt, I think, sometimes.
Right.
Um, so as a novelist, what you're trying to do is you're trying to dig in and understand the baseline of the character, and then the characters find that in each other, and that's what's fun. And for me, this book has an ending that honestly, and I don't want to reveal because it's a big
Sure.
reveal, but I didn't know it was going where it was going. I knew it was
Mhm.
going, but I didn't know the big reveal, the big
Yeah.
sort of redemption that comes. I went, oh, of course. And that's fun. It's fun for me as a reader when I read a writer and they take a turn you're not expecting, and then you say, "Oh, of course."
Yeah.
And that happened to me as a writer too. I saw this link. I said, "Oh, of course. That's what's going to happen." And that's fun. So I hope it's fun
Yeah.
for the readers too. But there is a redemption. redemptive element in the book that I didn't sort of set out. I set out hoping there would be redemption, but I didn't see the path when I started.
Got it. And we're going to definitely let our audience know how to stay connected with you, Joanne, as well as, of course, for those joining us on Amazon, you guys can be able just to be able to click the book. You see it here on the side of you or down below. For those joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you'll find a link there on Amazon to be to bring you guys over. Those tuning in on X, we'll put it in the comment section. Those joining us on Instagram, it'll be in the stories for you guys. So again, everyone, Joanne Leedom Ackerman is our guest for today. We're talking with her about her new book, The Far Side of the Desert. I want to talk about, I mentioned the family part first because that's what I always seem to connect with in books. Joanne, I want to talk about, though, the thrilling aspect of the story, the drama of the story in other ways. And that is, of course, what is happening around the world. One thing I think this book shows, especially when it comes to the actual attack, and that's not spoiling anything, that if it can read that on the back, is the connection with the world. One thing I kept thinking was how interconnected the world is, and how nothing is isolated, right? One thing that may have happened in one place can have worldwide implications. What was it like for you as it kind of took from coast to coast, showing that aspect of the story?
Well, it's interesting because when I began writing it, and I was writing these scenes that are in the desert and are quite extraordinary. In fact, one friend who's known me forever, and was a journalist with me, said, "How did you know what it was like to be in a sandstorm in the desert?" You've never been in a sandstorm in the desert. I said, "Well, I've been in the desert." And so you do a lot of writing and reading and thinking, and so I could make that happen, and I think be real. But the deep criminality, I don't have that personally. I'm happy to say, in my life. I'm not in criminal elements or criminal families, but it influences and affects all of us, and
Right.
often in ways we're not even aware of. And certainly in smaller countries, it becomes a membrane that just overlays itself on certain governments if there's deep corruption, and you almost can't get out from under it. And that began interesting me, and it includes the payoffs, the trafficking of arms and people, and um, money that happens. And so I began doing lots of research on that and seeing how that happened. But the actual place in that desert, I thought, where is this coming from in my imagination? Because the journalist really wants to make sure my imagination isn't just off the charts, off the rails.
Sure.
And so I did lots of research, and in fact found something historically that was not that far away. And I went, okay, I'm not really off the rails, because something somewhat similar has existed in more than one place, in a certain place. So and then I had to come to terms with who the real deep antagonists were, the elder.
Yeah.
And to come to terms with that antagonist, I really had to keep peeling back who this person was all the way to childhood, because we start somewhere, and we usually start out pretty okay, and then life happens.
Well,
So that was a
yeah.
journey.
Yeah. And it's so funny you said that, Joanne, because I think we can say that whole life happens with Monty and Samantha as well, right? That,
Yeah.
events in their lives kind of shape the people they become and how they approach the world, right? I want to talk about the idea of courage. And I think a lot of times, even for people who may think they can't do something, I think this book shows that when you're in certain situations, you have to make the decision that you're going to fight for what you believe in, but also fight for those who matter to you. What was it like for you to play with that, not only with the sisters, but also with the other characters we meet in the book?
Yes. Well, there are a number of situations where there really is, deep danger, and you have to make that judgment.
Yeah.
Am I going to just walk away or walk towards it? And I had to know the characters. I had to say, what would they do? And Samantha had some real life choices at certain points with decisions. One took her one way that was protecting something that she cared about, and one took her the other way. And it's funny, most novels will tell you this: when you're writing, the voices are in your head, and the characters begin telling you what they're going to do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
fun. They begin saying, I'm not going to do that. This is what I'm going to do. And so when you've really plugged into your characters, you know it, because they begin telling you what's
Mm.
happening. You just have to listen to their voices. You're not totally in charge. It's not mystical, but
Mhm.
you're typing away, and sometimes it's like you're just taking dictation because they're talking, and you're just writing it down. So that was
Yeah.
fun for me. That's always fun for me.
Joanne, for you, do you find that you're at a place in your career that you can just write what you love and that know that there's an audience out there for it? Or what kind of continues to drive you as a storyteller?
Well, I love telling stories. I never take for granted that there's an audience out there. I love my audience. I love audiences and readers, and I'm so grateful to
Right.
them, and I'm so grateful to find them. But I never take for granted that they're out there. So you sort of you build the audience that likes what you're doing, and you try to stay in touch with, however, book clubs or readings or podcasts like this. But what keeps me going is I'm a writer. I mean, I people often say to me, I've taught writing too, say, well, I want to be a writer. And I said, well, are you writing? And they say, well, no, but I want to be a writer. I said, well, the only way you can be a writer is what's in your head has to come onto paper and words. So don't say
Right.
I want to be a basketball player and then never get on the basketball court. So I love to write. It's where the world comes together for me. It's where I begin to make sense out of things. So even when, for a long time things weren't getting published, I was writing the next book, and then I was writing the next book, because the world is coming together for me when I'm writing, and I'm beginning to see things I wouldn't see if I weren't putting it on paper. So that's
Love
sort of the given for me.
it. But the great thing I know for the audience as well, again, everyone, Joanne Leedom Ackerman has been our guest. She's the author of the new book, The Far Side of the Desert, that's out in paperback this week. You all can be able to get the book either in print or the Kindle edition here on Amazon. I'm going to highlight the print edition for you guys, or you can get the Kindle edition there, as you can see, for 67% off, only $9.99. Joanne, it's
Ooh.
been great having you on with us for the program. How can our viewers and listeners stay connected with you?
Well, I hope they will. I have a website, www. Joanne, Joanne, Leedom, Leedom Ackerman.com. On that, you'll see the link to a Substack. I do a Substack once a month. It's free, called On the Yellow Brick Road, in which I have a blog. I have news about the book. I profile at least one writer at risk in the world that you can
Ah,
take action for. And then I have a couple of books that I have just come to focus on. It's books, and then at the very end, I have a little thing called Words of the Month, words you might never use but might like to know, which are sort of fun words. I always thought I had a good vocabulary, and then I found all the words I don't know. So I have a couple of words. So the
love it.
Substack is called On the Yellow Brick Road. So that's a way, and just be in touch. I love talking to book clubs on Zoom or in person, and it's fun for me to meet readers. It makes the book even more real to me after I've written it.
Love that. Well, congratulations to you again, Joanne. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Good. Thank you so much, Cyrus. I've appreciated it. Thanks.
More than
Bye.
welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in. It's another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.